Well, hiya, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Coming to you this morning with a tag. I got tagged in a couple of videos last week, and so I really need to get to work on making up some of these tags. So I'm going to do the 10 odd or weird questions book tag, and this was created by Sean D. Standfast over at his channel, and I'll leave the link to that below. And I watched several of these videos that people did because Sean tagged several people, and so just a couple of them. I watched Jason at Byways and Bookland, Jack the Rambling Racketer, and Mark Richardson, and there were several others that I watched. But I wanted to do this, and thank you, Sean, for thinking of me and tagging me. So let's go ahead and get started. So question number 1 on the 10 odd or weird questions book tag. Where was the oddest place you purchased a book from, and was it a keeper? And for me, I was trying to think of odd places. I guess I'm boring. I don't go to real odd places to go buy books. I buy books at bookstores, used bookstores. Anytime we're out at Target, Walmart, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, any of those type of stores, I'll look for books while I'm there. Any store that's got books in it, I'm probably gonna find them. I have a pretty good nose for that. My wife, she kind of laughs at that, shakes her head at me. I've went to the Salvation Army, the community center. I've went to all those places. I've went to flea markets and found lots of books, but I don't think any of those are really odd. So I got to, I was kind of stumped on this question, but then when I got to thinking, I was talking to a friend, and I used to teach with a friend who he liked to go to estate sales. I like to go to estate sales. And there was this one estate sale where I think the older person had passed away, and there's just a bunch of stuff from the last 100 years sitting in this little house, and they had it all spread out on the lawn on tables and everything. And my friend, he was half blind. Legally, he was blind. He had a degenerative eye issue, and he could only see like tunnel vision, and it was kind of cloudy. And he was actually a teacher, and he was a very good teacher, very, very good teacher. And he had his limitations, obviously, but he really worked around his disability, and he did really well. And anyway, he was a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends, and he'd passed away a couple years ago. But I thought I'd tell a little story on him. We were at this estate sale, and he liked to collect postcards. And in this estate sale, there was just these boxes, huge tubs loaded down with postcards, and there were some people there bidding on them. My mother-in-law was one of them. My mother-in-law collects rose postcards with roses on them, and just to show you kind of how nice a guy he was, there was only a couple of those postcards he wanted. Well, he went and bought the entire lot. It's 3-4 big totes of nothing but postcards. And then I'll be darned if he went through that entire thing, picked out all the rose postcards, and then went and gave them to my mother-in-law for free. He's just that type of guy. Well, anyway, they had this big old trailer. It was like something a farmer would use to haul hay. One of the big old long trailers, and a heavy-duty thing. It was loaded down with books. And of course, I kept coming back to it, and I'm circling the wagon, literally circling the wagon pretty much half the morning, kind of looking and trying to find. I found a few titles here and there, and when it came time to do that, those books, they were going to sell them in piles, in lots, I guess, in piles. And got to going through, and I quickly figured out there were not that many people there that were interested in books. And so I'd been watching the whole day and looking through, and the auctioneer had figured that out, and he kept looking at me, waiting for me to bid. Well, me being the tightwad I am, I sat and waited and waited and waited. And, you know, there was 3, 4 people that got books out of piles. And then the price again, do 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 do. And then he's like, okay, well, doesn't look like anybody's going to buy it. How about the whole trailer? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, wow. You know, I've shared with you before how my wife feels about books, or lots of books. And so anyway, I'm sitting there staring, and here's my friend, Mr. V. He's leaning on his cane, and he's just, what you gonna do, Bill? And he always has this little, he'd kind of rock, and he'd get to laugh, and he had this big hearty laugh. I said, V, the Amber's she'll kill me if I get this whole thing. He goes, oh, but you know you gotta have it. You know you can't walk away. So, long story short, I bought an entire trailer, literally loaded down with books, and I can't remember if it was $1, $2, maybe $5. I want to say it was $1 or $2 to get rid of the whole thing, and I bought all of them. And he just started cackling, started laughing, and he had this big laugh, and so needless to say, I loaded up the car, and it took a couple car loads to get that, and took them home, and my wife was just livid. What are you going to do with all those? How are you going to store those? And so we went round and round, and anyway, long story short, I kept there might have been 10 of them in the whole wagon, and the rest of them went to the community center. And so they had to figure out how to get rid of those books, because I couldn't figure it out. And there was probably the biggest problem, not just the size of the lot, but also they had a really dusty, moldy smell to them. A lot of them, most of them really. And my wife has asthma, It's gotten better since she was younger, but it really affects her breathing when we bring dirty, dusty things into the house. So we got to not do that. And so anyway, that was a couple of them were keepers. The rest of them we had to get rid of. So that's my odd place. It's not really an odd place, but it was kind of a fun story. So number 2, have you read a book in public that had a title which could be interpreted in a different way and got strange looks? Again, I'm a boring guy. I could not think of one for this. The one that I thought of was John Jakes' The Bastard. And I love that book, and it's got so much great historical information in it. And I wanted to take it to school, and the only thing I could think was, no way. Can you imagine the kids going home and talking about this book I was reading? It's got a bad word on it. And, that was probably the one that would maybe hit that the most. And if you haven't seen Jack the Rambling Racketeer's video on this, you need to go watch it. Go hit that link and listen to his answers on this, because they made me laugh out loud for quite some time. They were quite funny. I have nothing that compares to that. I will say that when a book is really big and everybody's talking about it, and it makes you curious. And so I was in Walmart, Target, and you keep seeing that on the shelf, 50 Shades of Grey. Now, it's not an odd title or an odd author's name, but everybody knows what's in that book. And you keep walking by it, and you keep looking at it, and you get curious. I never fell for that curiosity. I didn't pick it up. I was too embarrassed. There was no way I was going to do that. I asked my wife, and she's like, I'm not picking that up. I'm not buying that. I'm not checking that out from the library. I don't want them to know my name was on that. And then she doesn't read that kind of stuff anyway. But that would probably be one that I might have got a strange look from if I would have followed through and either taken that one book to school or picked up the other one at the store. So number 3, what strange and wonderful things have you found in a used or new book? I haven't found a ton of stuff. I've shared this in other videos before with a similar question. I found old postcards. I like the old postcards because they'll have a story, or if they are used anyway, they'll have that message on there, and then you can kind of guess what was going on in their world at that time. I always think that's kind of neat. I've never seen any odd pictures. I've seen a family picture, but not odd pictures like some of them have talked about. Nothing that needs to be kept away in a box. Let's just keep it at that. newspaper articles is one of my favorites to find. You know, you're reading a book about, let's say, John F. Kennedy, and then you find a newspaper article that had been clipped out from his death and tucked away in the book. I've seen that many a times, or a book review tucked in there. That's kind of cool. I've seen like a biography on John Adams, and they'd clipped a newspaper article talking about the family tree of the Adams family tree, and it talks about the whole family and their work in politics. I've seen stuff like that, but it's nothing real odd. I think they're, well, it says strange and wonderful. I think they're wonderful. I think it adds to your story. Number 4 is smelling a book weird to you or a normal part of book buying and reading. No, I do not think it is strange at all. I always smell my books. You know, somebody else had mentioned using all the senses, and, you know, I do. I use my sight, I use my smell. I don't use my taste. That'd be weird. But I like the touch of the book, so I like to use my senses when reading. I think it makes it a full experience. You know, I have to make sure, like I said, my wife and her breathing and stuff, I have to make sure that the book is not too dirty, you know, musty, and you don't want any mold growing on it or anything like that, because that definitely will bother the breathing. Plus, when you get that old smell, it brings back memories. It's kind of nostalgic, because, you know, your smeller, it can bring back a flood of memories. I think back to when my mother had passed away, and my aunt sent me a box of stuff, and I opened it up, and you know, it had a couple old things of hers in it, and what hit me was the Salem 100s cigarette smell, because my mother was a smoker, and that smell hit me, and it's like I instantly got kicked back 20 years to when I was a kid, and I could picture, you know, my mom sitting there at the table smoking a cigarette, and then, you know, it brought back a flood of memories of when I was little. And so smells do that, and I love that in books. Number 6, what is the oddest comment you have received after telling someone you are a book collector? You know, it seemed like everybody has pretty much the same answer on this one as well. And I picked 3 different questions. Have you read all of these? And Jason talked about that. Have you read all these? And for me, I'm like, no, there are things I plan on reading. There's, you know, this is a lot of books, and you know I'm a slow reader. How would I be able to get all those read? So I've heard that one over and over again. Are you going to read these? My father-in-law asked me this, and many other people have asked me. My wife asks me that all the time, but I'm like, yes. I don't buy books with the thought they're just going to sit on the shelf. That I don't do that. I don't have the money to buy those old expensive ones like that. The books that I buy, I plan on reading. If you look on my shelves, you know, all my nonfiction stuff, and that's the majority of my collection's nonfiction. It's all going to help me in my career. It's going to help make me a smarter person in teaching kids at school. And so, yes, I plan on reading them all. Will I get to all of them before I die? Maybe not, but it's in the plan. I buy stuff that I would read, or I'm basically planning on reading. And then the other odd one is, you know, you get a collection and they ask you, well, what do you like to, you know, collect and read about? And I'm like, American Revolution, Civil War, and they'll, oh, have you read this? And they pull out this obscure title that I don't even know if the author remembers he wrote it. And I'm like, no, and they're, you haven't read that? What do you mean you haven't read that? You're supposed to be a professional in your area. You know, and they give you that attitude. And I'm like, I haven't read everything. I'm a slow reader. I'm a human being. I mean, there's just no way you can read everything from a subject. It's not possible. That's the great thing about reading. You can continue to get better and better and better, and you're never going to hit the top. You won't, because there will always be something you haven't read. So that question, I always think, is kind of an odd question. Number 7, describe a strange encounter at a bookshop either the bookseller or a customer. All right, well, this one wasn't strange, but I thought it was kind of funny. The other day when I was buying books at the bookshop in St. Joe, there was a older gentleman who I had not encountered before. I've encountered most of the workers there, and I've built a pretty good relationship. Well, this is a guy that was newer, or not, maybe not new, but new to me. And we got to chit-chatting because I went in. We kept my daughter because of the coronavirus. It's a smaller bookshop, so I went in, and my daughter came in first. My older daughter came in first, and then she went back out, and my wife came in, and we left my 3-year-old out in the car. You know, because of the virus, we didn't want my 3-year-old in the store. We wanted to keep her out in the car. And so, anyway, I'm waiting on my wife to get in there because she's, of course, got the money. And she's bringing in the pocketbook and going to look around a little bit. And I'm chit-chatting with the guy behind the desk. And he's like, well, what do you like to collect? And I'd just taken up a pile of Burke Davis books, you know, on the Civil War. And I said, well, I love Civil War, American Revolution. Those are, you know, a couple staples in my collection. And he just gets to ask, well, how many you got? And we got to chit-chatting about the size of our collections. I said, well, I got about, you know, 1,300 books, and then I haven't counted the fiction books, you know, so it's probably a little bit more than that. Oh, well, I've got 6,000. And I'm all of a sudden sitting here, this conversation has went from a kind chit-chat to, well, I think, you know, let's let it all hang out and see who's got the bigger collection. And I'm like, whoa, the conversation turned into a little different conversation. And I said, well, that's a pretty awesome collection. I hope one day maybe mine will get, you know, my collection will get that big. And I said, yeah, I joke with my wife, I'd love to put an addition onto our house, but I can't get her talked into it. And the addition would be nothing but a library. And he goes, yep, did that. I got a addition on the house with one room and then another room upstairs, and he goes, they're plumb full. And so I did not feel like my collection was that good anymore. Let's see here. So number 8, is it weird to pass a bookshop when you are out and not enter? I wouldn't say it's weird, but it does bug me, and it'll eat at me, that question that floats around in my head, that what if? What if they've got stuff that I want? What if I miss that book and I never come across it again in my life? So it's not weird for me not to go in, but it does bug me, and it eats at me for most of the day. Because there's a lot of shops I don't go in because, you know, I'm always, my wife's always, you know, kind of getting on me about the amount of books I got. And so I want to respect her opinion, and so there's a balance that's got to be done there. Just like any marriage, you got things that you got to compromise on. And so that's one of the things we compromise on. And so there are lots of them that I don't enter. I try to get into as many as I can if we've got time. And a lot of it depends on how much time we have. If we've got extra time, my wife doesn't mind going in and looking. But if we, you know, if we're in a hurry, we don't piddle around. So number 9. Are you drawn to weird or odd little dingy out-of-the-way bookshops, or do you prefer tidy shops? If I had access to both, I would go in both. I don't think a odd little dingy out-of-the-way shop would bother me. I would go in, and I'd probably love it, really. But my problem is where I live is a rural area, and it's a couple hours in each direction to get to a major town where you would find shops like that. There's just not that many shops, or at least that I know of, around here. I go in pretty much all the shops that have books around here, and I don't care if they're neat or not neat. I still go look. I enjoy the hunt. Let's see. I did find online a really cool bookshop that was in New York City. It was actually on the corner. It was a shop on the corner of this busy street, and it was a bookseller, and I can't remember the name of the seller, but it was totally loaded down, like you had to go sideways through the aisles, and they had books just stacked, not just on the shelves, but on the floor, and you had piles that would were kind of topsy-turvy. Well, this guy went out of business, and they had a video. It was, I think, like a 10-minute video talking about his shop, and I would love to have went in that shop. That would have been a fun shop to go explore and get lost in. Probably literally get lost. I'll try to remember to leave the link to that shop or that video of that shop down below. I thought that was a pretty cool shop, and I would love to have went in there before it closed down, but life happens. Number 10, books can come in odd shapes and sizes. What is the oddest shaped book you have come across? All right, and for me, I've shared this before also, a couple odd or different shapes. My daughter has this book that is on Noah's Ark. It's shaped in the shape of a boat, and then it's got a rainbow that goes across the top, and so you can see through the sky. You got the boat, and then the rainbow goes up above, and the rainbow acts like a kind of like a handle for the book. And so when you open it up, you also have the shape of different animals' heads sticking out of the boat at different pages, and it's a really neat book. But it's definitely an odd shape. And then the other one that I thought about was my book on baseball parks, and it's like really long, really tall, and it does not fit on the bookshelf very well. And I have to kind of finagle it in there. And I've got some atlases and stuff that are really big that don't fit on the shelf, just like probably a lot of you do. I wouldn't say it's too odd, but I've seen books, or I had books at one point that was the shape of a baseball. It was about baseball. It had little baseball, famous baseball sayings in it. And, I've seen stuff like that, and I think I saw one with the shape of a football as well. But those are probably the oddest that I have owned. So anyway, this has been the 10 odd or weird questions book tag made by Sean Standfast, and I'll leave the link to his channel and those other channels that I've mentioned in the video I mentioned. Thank you, Sean, for tagging me. This was a fun video to do. Sorry it took me so long to do it, but better late than never, right? So I got this done. Anybody hasn't done this and's got some odd answers that they would love to share, please feel free to do the video, because I know there's lots of you out there that like to wander around in the shops, and you probably have some odd experiences that would be fun to listen to. So feel free to do that. Feel free to feel tagged. And thank you for watching my video. Thank you for all the new subscribers. I really appreciate that. Feel free to leave any comments that you'd like, and I'll try to get back with you. Until next time, BookTube, have a great day.